Greetings, happy Sunday, happy Father's Day. Interestingly, we have the themes of Mars energy up today with an exact Mars-Uranus square. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about Mars and what it means and how to work with it in positive ways. And also, we have the square between Jupiter and Saturn, bringing in themes of how we shift our beliefs and our understanding in ways that impact the collective. I'm Marina Orms here with your Astro Vibe for Sunday, June 15th. So, thinking about these two squares, which have both of them have been building in pressure. They're not suddenly activated today. They've actually been around here with us and just sort of increasing in how we are feeling them. So some of the themes of how of the military and just some of the Mars energy of warrior courage and action, some of the protests and some of the clashes we've been seeing so much about in the news and between protesters and how just questions about who gets to be in charge, who gets to decide, how are we going to do that as a society? So many questions, right? Okay, I'm not I'm not going to dive into all of that because it's a lot. But what I do want to talk about today is that Mars energy. And so Mars is, we have Venus and we have Mars, right? They're the closest planets to Earth other than the moon, which is not a planet, but we call it a planet in astrology. Anyway, so we have this Mars, Venus, balance, right? So we've got the receptive energy and the qualities of Venus that have to do with beauty and how we receive and what we desire, and that experience of wanting things and valuing things and appreciating things and wanting to experience beauty and how, and just that very receptive part of ourselves. And then we have Mars, which says, okay, that's what you want. Here's what you need to do to get it. And so Mars is about action. It's about life force energy. It's about movement. It is about going for what you want, being assertive, being proactive. So those actions that we need to take to move things forward. So that balance between Venus and Mars, right, that is sometimes compared with feminine and masculine energies, not that they are restricted to one gender or another, because we all have both of these energies inside of us. So it's more about maybe how society views these energies and sort of our roles within them and how to see them, how we see them in terms of genders. At any rate, we all have both energies inside of ourselves. So that Mars energy is about how we move, how we take action, how we go for what we want. It can show up as the energy of fighting, of dominance or domination. It can be the energy of aggression, even violence, bullying. It can be anything that, that we experience as harsh or so it can even be out of, anything that's sort of out of line emotionally. Lots of ways it can show up. But on the positive side, though, Mars energy can really take us into this deeper place of courage. And so, how we can take action that is not just dominating or bullying or clobbering someone over the head in order to get what you want from them. We can think of that Mars energy as an evolutionary impulse to learn how to get the things we want without in deeper ways, right? Through acknowledging, hey, I want this, you want this, we may have a conflict here. How are we going to work that out? So Mars is about the evolutionary impulse to discover how to get what we want. And that path, that journey of really learning what our souls are here to do and learning that deeper, more complicated, more vulnerable way of getting things done, right? Getting what we want, getting those Venus desires fulfilled. How can we do that in ways that acknowledge, hey, we have differences. We may not agree. You might not do things the way I do, or I think we should. And then how are we going to work that out? Because that is a lot more complicated than just clobbering somebody over the head and saying, I win, you do it the way I want. So that evolutionary impulse is actually inviting us to learn how to get along and solve problems, not always in a peaceful way, because sometimes you have to move through that discomfort of taking Mars action, and other times that the need to move through that energy, even though it can upset the apple cart in some ways in the short term, may be the best way to get the best outcome and ultimately to bring uh, your deeper desires into being, right? So there's clobbering someone over the head because you want that banana that they have or whatever, right? I'm just making this up, um but right, you want something they have, you clobber them over the head and you take it, right? That's sort of easy or um simplistic Mars approach. But what if you acknowledge, hey, this person has a banana that I want, and actually, if I take the banana from them, the place that they're getting the bananas from, I am never going to know. So if I clobber this person, I might get one banana, but I don't know where I'm going to get bananas in the future, right? So okay, what's the next step? Can I work things out with this person who has something I want, but maybe it's more complicated? Maybe I need to make some compromises or listen or do a little more investigating. I mean, there's lots to this, but you see how it can get a lot more complicated. And now suddenly it's not just about my ability to clobber someone over the head, but it's about a much more complicated skill set. And that skill set is how I'm going to get more of what I want, more sustainably, longer term, and in a way that works better for me. And ultimately, I think that our experience of life is better when we can have others on the same page, right? So maybe we're building community. Maybe we're learning how to solve our problems and get more bananas more sustainably for the longer term together. And that's better for everybody. But the ability to see that, right? It's a more complicated skill set. And not only is the ability to see how to get there a more complicated skill set, but all the steps you have to take, all the trial and error, all the risks you have to take, all of that involves courage. So bring it back to the present day and some of the conflicts we see in the world, some of the things that maybe we desire. Uh, Maybe we want solutions to climate change. Maybe we want peace in the world. Maybe we want healthcare. Maybe we want, it's like some of these bigger picture collective problems. This Mars evolutionary journey is about learning how to get what we want by taking action, by taking risks, by finding our courage and figuring it out ultimately, because it's not going to be just like, okay, do A and then B happens, right? It's going to be like, okay, try this, see what happens, see what you learned from it, see how you need to adapt, see what you want to do differently. There's lots of possibilities in there, but it's a process, it's a journey, it's a learning path. It's not the simplistic answer, which is if I can dominate you, I can have what I want. But ultimately, it's not, you can't have what you want at deeper levels by approaching the world that way. So this Mars evolutionary journey and thinking about self-care, because that's what we talk about here, is how can you take care of yourself so that you can deepen into your own Mars evolutionary journey, your own development of problem solving skills, and that deeper skill set of how to bring yourself to the table, but also to see what other resources you may have. Maybe somebody knows something you don't know, or knows how to do something you don't know how to do. How do you work together with others in that deeper, more complicated way that might mean being vulnerable and saying, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me? Right? Things like that. That on that Mars journey, there's a learning process and a learning curve to discover what we're capable of through learning how to take action in ways that are courageous. And what does that look like? What does that mean? And so bringing this back again to present day problems, right? Quote unquote problems and their solutions is that what we are being asked of now, especially with this Mars-Uranus square, is to say, what does this courage look like for you? And this is not, there's not one size fits all answer. It is not like if you go out in the streets and protest, all the problems will be solved, right? It's not. If you're paying attention, you know that there's a lot of layers of complexity. And not to say that activism and getting out in the streets is not important, but it is to say that there are many ways to participate. There are many ways to contribute, and there are many possibilities for what your courage might look like and how you might show up to say, how am I going to learn more about how to get what I want and how to create the kind of things that I want to see in the world, my desires, right? Which can, when we are deepening into our desires, we can also get to a more complex or complicated relationship with the things we want. Because initially it's just like, what do you want? I want $1 million. I want to win the lottery. Right? I want the thing that is representative of abundance in this moment. Like the thing that feels limiting to me is my bank account. So I just want to have all the money, right? But and just like clobbering someone over the head to get their banana, that is really a little bit overly simplistic, right? Because you could have all the money, but what if you didn't have air to breathe? What if you didn't have water to drink? What if you were the only person left in the world? It's like money is not everything. So what is it that you want? And being honest with yourself at deeper levels, the same way we need to be more complex in our approach to Mars energy, we can also be more complex in our approach to Venus energy. So Venus is not highlighted as much by this aspect, but it's worth bringing in just because of the balance between Mars and Venus. So anyway, deepening into a more complicated view of what you want, what's important to you, and like that could be something you want that is more empathetic to the rest of the world, like what is good for somebody even in another country, like how is that good for me? So thinking bigger, thinking more complexly, thinking more about what our hearts really want and how, so that can help us say, okay, what I really want is to know that there's less suffering in the world, right? That's more empathetic, it's more complicated, it's more intangible. It's also harder to know what to do to achieve something that intangible. But when you know what you want, you can start to take action in ways, and you can check yourself. You can say, does this feel like it is assisting me or assisting the world or benefiting the world in some way? Does it feel good? Does it feel right? Does it feel true? Does it feel helpful? Because maybe if you're doing something helpful for your neighbor, you're also helping to reduce suffering in the world by doing that one little tangible act that is part of a much bigger thing that can be harder to figure out how to solve. So in other words, there's not one answer to these problems. There is an invitation, however, to step into your own capacity to engage and your own ability to make a difference. And that is what this Mars-Uranus square is about. It's saying, what do you need to do? What do you need to find? What do you need? How do you need to find your courage? Where do you need to take risks? What would action look like to you? What is the right action for yourself? Right? What is right for somebody else to do may not be the same as the right action for you. The important thing is that you are doing the right action for yourself. And some days, sometimes that's just going to be, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to get rest. I'm going to stock up my fridge. Right? Like some of those basics, because that gets you to a place perhaps where now you can say, okay, now I can think about what I can do to contribute, to benefit the greater good, to help to be part of the solution. And what does that look like for you? So I don't have the answers, but I'm saying this is the way you want to think about the question is more, how is this part of my evolutionary journey in terms of how I am learning to take action, how I am learning what courage means for me, how I am learning how to take risks in ways that help me learn more of my own problem solving skill set. So what is that for you? What does that look like? Thinking about that, reflecting on that. And so Mars and Uranus it's about a 2-year cycle, maybe a little bit more. And then, so every 6 months, well, 6 months would be 1/4 of the way through the cycle, which is what this square is, 1/4 of the way through the cycle. So in this case, because of Mars went retrograde last fall. We have an extended period of time between the conjunction, which was in July of 2024, and the first quarter or the first square, waxing square of that we're having right now, today, exact. So, so in other words, we have an extended experience of the cycle, but this cycle is normally, I mean, the full cycle takes about 2 years. So, so we will, it's not a long-term cycle is what I'm getting at. But it is continual. It's a continual process of evolving and developing our own capacity to take action in more complex ways that solve problems at deeper levels. And so if someone in the world is acting like a bully, or someone in your life or someone you know is doing more of that energy of like, I'm just going to be violent, and somehow that's going to make things better. I don't know what the thinking is there, but It's right. It's part of our human experience. So sometimes um, we see that in the world, and so the option is to say, instead of being in fear, to say, okay, how can I respond? What is my action step that I can take in response to, um, things that feel overwhelming or sometimes can be overpowering? Just coming into yourself and asking, what is the baby step? What is the action step I can do? And when you're the one experiencing the trauma, which is also part of our human experience, you don't have to solve that problem, right? You got to take care of yourself first. You have to do your own healing work first and start there, and then see where you go from there. So anyway, Mars and Uranus is bringing this activation energy, but we can think of it as how we are being invited to step into our courage, what action looks like for each of us as an individual. And that, because of the coinciding of this square, which is, like I said, is not terribly infrequent, but the Jupiter-Saturn square is a 20-year cycle, so that's longer term, and it has more to do with communities and nations and the bigger picture of how we all get along with one another and how we structure our societies and so on. So that bigger picture of questioning is going on at the same time that coincides with this need to step into choice and action and courage and find the right risks to take that help you to further your own skill set in solving problems, which is a longer term evolutionary journey. It's just that it resets every couple of years, unlike the Jupiter Saturn cycle that takes 20 years to unfold. So each reset is a new beginning point, just like with the new moon. The new moon is the sun moon cycle. This is the Uranus Mars cycle that we happen to be talking about because of today's square. So, food for thought. Thanks so much for being here. I'm Marina Orms. You can learn more about me at astrologyheals.com. I have space in my calendar for readings and to provide you support as you navigate these challenging times for yourself. Getting that insight from your chart can make all the difference. So I highly recommend a consultation when you are in need of support or when you feel ready. Or even if you don't feel ready, maybe it's the risk to take for your own self-care and to support your own process. So astrologyheals.com, book a reading with me. I'd love to meet with you one-on-one. And thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing to this YouTube channel. I've got articles and more on my member site. Check it out in the link in the description for this video. And I will see you next time with more astrology for unshakable self-care. Bye for now.